What's up, Server Nation? My name is Michael Reed, the podcast server, and you are listening to Process Server Daily. On this podcast, we interview the top legal support professionals and get the tips, tools, and tactics that they use to get the job done and build a successful company. I'm a big fan of storytelling, and I'm excited about today's guest. Before we get started, let's give a big shout out to my new sponsor, Serve Manager. They have a special gift for all of my listeners at the end of today's episode. Server Nation, welcome back to Process Server Daily. Our guest today has worked in every position in his company, Bosco Legal Services Incorporated. He started at the very bottom, sweeping the parking lots and taking out the trash. He is now the vice president and is well known in California for being a social media cyber investigation expert. Joseph Jones, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in this industry.
Yeah, it's a family company. My dad was a private investigator, started out of our kitchen when I was a couple years old. Yeah, grown our business. We now have about 50 employees. We've got a couple offices throughout Southern California. And so I, like you said, I literally started at the very bottom when I was a kid, and have, really learned every piece of what we do and been able to develop some pretty cool stuff.
That's really cool. So were you one of the kids that went to the courthouse by yourself and filed papers?
Oh yeah. Yep, definitely. And, and when I was in college, I'd be down there at the courthouse doing my homework while I'm waiting to get called at the window. And interestingly enough, I didn't originally plan on sticking with the family company. I was going to become a social worker after I finished college, but some opportunities opened up. Some things changed. I decided to get married and start having a bunch of kids, and I figured social work wouldn't really, foot the bill. So I stuck with it and have been able to, be a part of some, pretty expansive growth.
It's funny that in this industry, so many people end up in this industry and in not really a planned way, but it ended up being such a great turnout for them. Sounds like it worked out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a huge blessing.
Joseph, there's a reason you're on my show. You have a lot going on right now, full of experiences. But first, tell me about your worst experience working in the field.
So I'll say this: it's very rare that I go out in the field anymore. Now I do a lot of desktop investigation. I also just kind of do a lot of administration within our company. But when we're talking about, field stuff, one of the, and I never had anything real terrible happen, but I was doing surveillance one day. It was kind of crappy surveillance, like most surveillances are, just sitting in the car for hours on end, waiting for something to happen. Didn't really have any activity. The next morning we had another one of my guys out there that the guy we were conducting surveillance on, came running after him with a machete. So that, and it was kind of crazy. He had one of his friends block off the street with his car, and he comes running out after him. So it got pretty hairy. So I wasn't there for that, but that got pretty interesting.
That's crazy. And it's funny because when we go from stop serving to just going in the office and kind of managing everything, it's funny the mindset shift when you start doing more office stuff. You still remember when you were out there serving, and you still remember the different challenges that were out there. I know I still serve. One of the reasons is because I can't find anybody to serve 30, 40 papers in a night,
Sure.
I guess the only way I could do that is if I was to hire somebody full time and to train them, go out with me every day. Is that what you guys kind of done?
Yeah, so we do the best that we can to have all of our people cross-trained, right? I want my office staff to know what it's like in the field, and I want my field staff to know what it's like in the office. Because I think when they understand the whole picture, they can do a better job.
That's so true, because when you go out there in the field, you want to get to the next serve, and so you might not put all the diligence the way that you were supposed to, or maybe write down all the license plates, or maybe you didn't put a description of somebody. You get back, and if you've ever worked in the office, that's crazy. It's like you got to pick up the phone and call me, what did this person look like? And if they're serving 30 or 40 papers a day, they may not remember.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We just hosted a CALS Pro continuing education thing at our office a week or two ago, and I had 10 of my office people here. Most of them are not going to be out serving papers probably ever, but I want them to know, what the field guys go through and to get that training.
That's awesome. So what I take most from your story is cross-training. As your company grows, you got to cross-train people so that they understand the different parts, and it can be a better working team.
Yep.
What do you want Server Nation to get most from your worst experience and from your experience growing your company?
Yeah. So I mean, vigilance is important, right? Especially, when you're out there, in the field, you've got to, keep your eyes open, keep your head on a swivel, especially, since I know a lot of your, viewers are process servers, A, for safety, but B, just generally speaking, taking really good notes, right? It helps so much getting plate numbers, knowing if, people are coming and going from the house, if, they're tagging the doors, things like that, really help you be more efficient and a more valuable asset to your company.
That's awesome. Those are some major value bombs. As people grow, it's cool because you see a company go from like a one-man show, and then he goes to like a one-man show who has help, and then he goes from that to then, okay, now I need to hire people, employees, and like there could be a scale. I'm writing a book on process serving basic training, and I'm kind of putting all these different elements in there. So depending on your level will depend on where you're going to fall within that realm. So it's really cool to hear you talk about the cross-training and stuff.
Right. And I guess one more thing that I'll piggyback on there. I've been doing this since I was a kid. I've seen a lot of stuff. One of the challenges I see for companies, who are trying to grow, they start as the one man and are trying to grow like you're talking about. You've got to adjust everything as you're growing. Right? Especially your pricing. As a one-man show, you probably can charge less than the bigger guys and still make as much money. But as you're growing, your overhead grows, right? And so if you're not increasing your rates, certainly you're adding more value to your clients. You can justify higher rates, but if you try and keep those low rates, you're going to be working a lot more and you're going to be making less money.
That's true. I didn't know how, when I first started, I was getting like $25 a serve, and I didn't know how anybody could do it. And I was getting it from an affiliate, and I wanted to raise my prices on her, and she goes, I don't go serving. Like, I just give all my serves away. And so I need half. And I was like, but she's not really doing any of the work. And then once I started my own business, doing my own marketing, I was like, wow, I got to pay phones. I got to pay for rent, PG&E, someone to answer the phones if I'm not going to be doing it. Yeah, it's crazy. You get a lot. You get a lot of bills, a lot of expenses. So that's awesome, Joseph. So tell me about your greatest experience working in the field.
So I'm gonna share with you an experience that it actually wasn't in the field. I mean, I've had some good ones. There's always fun stories, but it's actually a cyber investigation that I worked. So it was a fraud case, and there were several levels to the fraud that we were looking at. Essentially, the case was it was back east, and it's all like public record now, so I can talk about it. We had there was a building that was insured as a family style restaurant. The building burned down. A couple $2 million loss for the insurance company. So the insurance company, they thought something smelled funny about, the claim in general. So they brought us on to look at several different things. First was going to be, hey, like, was this arson initiated by, a competitor? Was it initiated by the owner of the building? How did it come about? And then B, was the facility actually a restaurant? Because, when they went and did the inspection after it had burnt down, there were several things that made them think, hey, maybe this wasn't a restaurant. So we did our investigation. We were able to come up with a significant amount of evidence indicating that it was one of the owners of the company that had started the fire. We weren't able to prove that because that end really fell on the local fire marshal and sheriff's department, because they're the ones who have access to the facilities to do all that kind of stuff. But we found a lot of evidence to support that. But what was really interesting is we found that this restaurant wasn't actually a restaurant. It was a strip club, which when you're talking about insurance coverage, they're two entirely different risks, right? One, our insurance company, they don't insure strip clubs because they're way too big of a risk, right? A lot of stabbings, a lot of shootings, a lot of competitors trying to burn their place down. So we were able to, via social media, even though a lot of accounts, they had deleted most of their, accounts, we were able to establish through patrons to the establishment that it was in fact a strip club. And we found lots of good stuff, and it was really interesting. But the one piece of evidence that just blew everybody away, and it's the kind of thing you blow up and put in front of a jury if they have the stomach to handle it. We found a photo that a patron had taken inside the establishment of a stripper on a stripper pole with a flamethrower, blowing flames out all over the place. And that's the kind of evidence that it's like, a lot of this stuff we find, we can't write this stuff. It's just too good most of the time, kind of unbelievable unless you're looking at it.
Wow, that is so cool. And so just so Server Nation knows, you're saying that you work for an insurance company where they paid you to do an investigation and try to figure out if there was any fraud going on, and this is the kind of stuff that you were uncovering.
Yep.
Wow, that is crazy. So those a flamethrower.
Yep.
I doubt they were coded for that.
Yeah, no, they weren't. And part of our investigation too found that the city had been trying to shut them down for like 6 months, and that's one of the reasons the fire happened shortly after they had been shut down. So they're trying to get the insurance money because the city is getting so much pushback that they're not able to operate. So they figured, hey, why don't we torch our place and get a little insurance money out of it.
That is an awesome experience.
It was a fun one. I remember, man, when I shot that over to the client, I'm like, you are never going to believe what we just found.
That is awesome. So, Joseph, tell me, what are you working on right now that has you most fired up, most excited?
So, all right. So we'll, we do social media investigations, and we do them in a way that's very, very unique. We're not just looking for their public profile. We're not just looking for, sending, links or a quick report over to a client so they can, review somebody's social media. We're going through and we are finding, the individual, their friends, their families. We're legally finding ways to penetrate privacy settings to find hidden content and using that as primary evidence in cases. Whereas everybody's using social media to assist their investigations now. If you're not, you're living, 20 years ago. But we're really doing, this thorough dive and then, forensically preserving it and using it for the attorneys to use in their case in chief as they're prosecuting their cases, and it's been game changer over the last 5 years. We've had like 700% growth within our investigations division, and it's done phenomenal things for our company.
Well, I got to tell you, that's something definitely worth being excited about.
Yeah, and and the next thing that we're looking at, and we've already started, and it's come by way of requests from clients, is we're getting also into jury consulting and using social media to help the attorneys pick the jurors that they want, keep track of them during trial, and some other jury consulting type stuff, which that's also really cutting edge. It's really exciting.
So let me see if I understand this. So back in the day, attorneys would just be able to interview them and decide, okay, we want you, we don't want you, we want you, we don't. So you're saying that you will say, okay, you get the list of jurors, and then you'll go investigate each of them so that on social media, and then you'll also monitor them going forward so if they're talking about the case online.
Right, sure. And, yes. So, and that's still the main way that it's done, right? It's called voir dire. You've got, a couple hours where you've got the attorneys are interviewing all the prospective jurors to pick which one they want. And there's certain questions that they'll ask them that, jurors may or may not be truthful with their answers. And there's certain questions that the attorneys can't ask or don't have the time to ask because it's a condensed time frame. But there's certain things like we're working on one right now. Trial starts on Thursday, where you've got our client is a defendant. There's also another public agency that's a defendant. And so we're interested in finding out if the prospective jurors, how they feel about the government. Right? Since the government is involved in this case, we're interested to know, hey, are they pro-government? Are they anti-government? Because that's going to affect how they view the case, right? Because they're going to be really interested to, are they going to try and stick it to, Big Brother? right, award some huge verdict because they've got a bone to pick with.
Like a libertarian or somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we're able to look at all those things.
That's really cool. And so this next part here is an addition to the show. It's called the Server Nation Questionnaire. So for those of you that don't know, you could go on my website, processserverdaily.com/podcast, and you can ask a question of my guest, and we can play your video clip right here in this episode so that my guest can answer it for you. Today's question, Joseph, is what makes your company different from the others in your area?
So it almost depends on what aspect of our business you're looking at. Specifically social media investigations, the difference between us and the next guy is really significant because of the level of depth that we're doing our investigation. There is, we're doing nationwide, but let's just stick with California since that's a lot of, companies that watch your stuff. There's probably 3, maybe 5 companies in California and in individuals who do the type of investigation that we do at the level we do it. So the level of expertise as far as, social media investigations goes, that's one of the things that really separates us. When we're talking about process serving, I think one of the things that makes us different is the approach that we've been taking to the process serving end of our business. For years, we were going for, volume, trying to get as much work as we can, trying to be as busy as we can. Over the last several years, we've really changed that model because it's not successful, right? I mean, you can get a lot of work, but that doesn't mean you're being profitable. So we've really started cutting out a lot of clients, ones who were paying their bills even because, we established, hey, here's how much money we need to make. Here's the type of company that we want to be. Here's the type of employees we have. Here's the type of clients we want to have. And when we changed all that, it was for sure scary, at first, like say, hey, like we're cutting out these clients. But it's turned out to be a wonderful thing for us. And it's enabled us to bring on better staff, people who are more experienced, be able to pay our people better. They give them solid benefits. And so, for us, that's been, kind of one of the differences internally. And then it reflects on our work product, right? So when our clients are dealing with people who know what the heck they're talking about, they're dealing with people who are 3 steps ahead of them in solving their problems. Whereas before, years ago, there were a couple of us in the office who could do that, but not everybody, right? Because we had to bring on new, less experienced people because of the pay rate. And so we've been able to kind of overcome that, and it's been, phenomenal for our company.
This is awesome. You're dropping some major value bombs on us today. Yeah, I got to tell you, because I'm in a level right now where I'm getting ready to do that, and we're talking about rates and how we can scale and kind of switch things up, go from affiliates to mainly attorneys or even, some of these collection agencies. So it's really cool. I know the Server Nation is going to get a lot out of this episode. But Server Nation, Joseph has been dropping some major value bombs on us today, but prepare yourself because we're headed into the rapid fire round right after a word from our sponsors. Server Nation, imagine what you could do with another 25 minutes per job. This is how much time process servers who use Server Manager are saving. At just 100 jobs per month, that's over 40 hours that can be spent growing your business or doing more important things like spending time with your family. From job creation to affidavit generation, Server Manager is full-featured and hands down the most intuitive process serving software on the market. I use it for my business. I think you should use it too. In my firm, it's important for me to be able to automate the systems that get things done. Server Manager has done just that with their API integration, where you can set up literally any app that integrates with Zapier will integrate with Server Manager. I love it. I have set my whole firm up. Go to processserverdaily.com/Server Manager to get your free trial. If you like it after the 14-day free trial, they've offered to give you another 60 days for free as a thank you for being a Process Server Daily listener. That's processserverdaily.com/Server Manager. Welcome back to the show. Joseph, are you ready for the rapid fire round?
Let's do it.
What is your favorite skip trace tactic? And I know this is going to be deep.
Yeah. And it may not be what you're expecting, right? All right. So we're taking in, I don't know, 10 skip traces a day. We do a ton of skip tracing. And one of my favorite tactics is after we've exhausted all of the normal stuff, after you've done your databases, your pre-texting, your utilities, if we're still not able to find them, usually what I'll do is I'll call the person directly, because at this point, I've already exhausted my client's budget, right? The initial budget. And so I'll call the person. I'll say, listen, I'm a private investigator. I've been tasked to find you to get you served with these documents. I'm good at what I do. I'm going to find you, but I don't want to make this difficult for you, right? I don't want to jump out of the bushes at you at 2 a.m. I don't want to scare your kids. Like, why don't you just, agree to accept service and we'll do it professionally. And then I find, honestly, 50 to 75% of the time after I have that conversation with them, they'll be like, all right, let's do it. And so that I never lead with it, right? Because you have the potential of burning yourself. Yeah. But I throw that out there as kind of a last ditch effort for the basic methods. So that way, I can gauge their response, because at that point, it's not really shooting yourself in the foot because you've already tried. So then if they agree, great, we get it done. If they don't agree, now I can go back to the client and I can say, listen, we've done all of this stuff. We even tried this, it didn't work. Now I need you to give me budget to do a real investigation on this person. Take it past the initial couple $100 for a skip trace. And then usually, that gets the attorney sucked in because they they kind of like the story of it, right? Oh, this person has now challenged us. They're saying we can't do it. And then it's fun for me as kind of a challenge. All right, they're already good at hiding because I haven't been able to find them using our normal, 20 average skip tracing techniques. Now I got to put on the thinking cap and go get them, and I have budget to get it done. So it's not coming out of my pocket. I'm getting paid for the good work that I'm going to do.
That's kind of like pretext too, except for you're being completely honest with them. You're just telling them this is what I got. I've had one where this lady kept running in the house whenever I'd try to serve her, and I couldn't get close enough to communicate with her. So I found out that her kid went to school at this local school, and so I went to the piano recital, sat next to him, and served her right there at the piano. I mean, this is the reality that could happen. Why go through that when you can just accept service? So
right, absolutely, and and we'll use pretexting as well for sure. And that's usually we'll usually have to have somebody different than did the pretext make the follow up call, right? Because you don't want to you don't want to mess with that. But yeah, no, and again, nobody likes getting served, but it's a reality. The stuff's there. It has to be dealt with. I prefer before we start making their life miserable. And hey, I'm, especially after we've had that conversation, we'll go to funeral, man. We'll serve them at their mother's funeral if we have to, but we don't like to take it there if we don't have to.
Right. Definitely. What's your favorite tool for defense?
So I'm going to put a couple caveats before this. My process servers, I do not allow to carry any kind of a weapon. I think, it can be super problematic. I think a lot of people, when they're carrying some kind of weapon, it emboldens them to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. And I think that's really problematic. I think our greatest, as a process server industry as a whole, I think our greatest defense weapon is our words, being able to de-escalate situations. So I'll start with that. I am licensed to carry. I carry a .45 Kimber, and I pray that this situation will never come where I'm going to have to use it. But certainly, that's something available to me in the worst of circumstances. I also have a taser that I carry. It's an X2. It's pretty fun, and I've never had to use it on somebody who wasn't willing. But I did have in my family, we have 6 kids, and then baby sister. My baby sister, a couple of years ago, decided she was going to bring her boyfriend home to meet the family. They were talking about getting married. Long story short, he met the business end of my taser. I found out it does work quite well. And it turns out he's a really good guy. He actually works for us now. He does some marketing for us. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. But truly though, especially in the process serving situation, it's very, very rare. 1 out of a million times that you're going to need some kind of defense other than your words. I found, de-escalation is always the best way to go.
That's good. That's good stuff. I agree wholeheartedly about that. What is the greatest advice you've ever received?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've been blessed to grow up in the company with my dad and my oldest brother, who I received a lot of training, from them, both, kind of in conversations and just in watching them. But I would say, so it's probably never said to me, but it's one of the things that I've observed and we've developed as a company over the last, 10 years is know your value, right? If you undervalue what you're doing, everybody else around you is going to undervalue you as well. When people come to me, they come to me because they know that I'm going to be able to help them with their situation, and they're willing to pay good money for that help. If I'm trying to beat the next guy's price by, $5, $20, $100, that's going to devalue what I do, because my value goes much further beyond the money that I'm getting paid. And that's, I think, one of the major challenges I've seen within the process serving industry is so many people become price centered. They think, hey, I've got to be, cheaper than the next guy. Hey man, this isn't retail, right? This isn't, Walmart where everybody's going to try and save, $2. And certainly there's law firms out there that are like that, but as more people move away from that model, the industry is going to grow as a whole.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I always beat a dead horse about brand versus commodity. And if all you're doing is thinking about Steve Jobs, I think it was Steve Jobs was talking about Nike. Do you want to be the Nike where you're honoring great athletes and people look up to you, or do you want to be the guy that says, hey, we're the cheapest price and we can get it done the fastest? So I'm really glad you brought that up. We can become a commodity very easily if we're not careful.
Right.
So you got to step out, and I have no doubt that your company has stepped out in that way with the social media, with the investigation, with some of the stuff that Trent was telling me about what you're doing with Serve Manager and stuff, and we'll get into that. But what I take from that is, like you said, know your value. That's where it starts. It's the foundation. Build a brand and work up from there. Good stuff.
Yep.
Joseph, what would you do if you woke up tomorrow with all the same skills and knowledge, but you didn't know anybody and only had $100, a smartphone, and a car? What would you do to regrow your business?
We're very growth-minded as a company. We're doing a lot of growing. So I think about these things pretty often. All right, what would I do if I, went to a different state, and decided to grow? There's some other places, that might be kind of fun to live. It's really about networking, right? I would go and I would find a law firm who would have need of what I can do, and I just say, hey, this is an interesting tie-in and might seem to conflict with what I previously said, but I'd try and get in the door. If they wouldn't let me in the door, if they didn't have any cases, they had too many concerns, I'd say, hey, let me do a case for you for free. I'm so confident that what I'm going to bring to the table is better than what you're doing right now, that I'll invest, 20 hours a week of my time to help show you how valuable it can be. I do the case, they'd be amazed, and then I come on and do all their pay and stuff at good rates.
That's awesome. Those are value bombs. So what would you do in detail? So you're saying you would go into the office and you just drive in there, and how many offices would you hit? How would you do it?
Yeah. So I mean, I think, so what I do, so for example, let's say we got a big law firm that I'm going to get my foot in the door. I'd go in, I'd find a way to talk with whoever the partner is, right? Whoever the decision maker is. If I can't get them right then when I walk in, I'm going to follow up by email. I'm going to follow them on LinkedIn. I'm going to figure out where they go to church. I'm going to show up and sit in the pew next to them. I'm going to figure out who the decision maker is and what I can do to establish a relationship with them. And then I'm going to pitch to them, hey, here's what I can do. Social media, here's how it's going to affect your case. Here's how it's going to help you. Oftentimes I find with my level of expertise, once I have that conversation with them, they're like, hey, it's worth giving a try. If they're not, then that's when I'm going to say, hey, your client doesn't want to invest the money. I'm going to do your first case for you, no charge, just so you can see how stinking valuable this is to you.
Boom! That is amazing. That is awesome stuff. So, I mean, when you were saying about sitting next to him in church, I couldn't help but think like, listen, if I can find where you go to church, I can find where the guy that's frauding you is going to church. Yeah.
Yep. And it's interesting. And I've done a little bit of that before. And I'll tell you, it's a fine line to walk, right? You don't want your clients to be too creeped out. with what you're doing. But there's there's certainly an element of being able to, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. And if you can show them that you've got the knowledge, you've got the expertise, and you're ready to make it happen, they're going to jump on board.
That's good stuff, Joseph. You have really been rocking it here today. So what is your parting piece of advice for Server Nation?
So there's a couple pieces. So first, again, is know your value. I can't rely on that too much, because we see often, and we don't really consider them competitors because they're working with a different client base. But we see these people who they just, there was a company local to us that they just went out of business. We ended up hiring on most of their staff to help us. But they were a company that they went out of business because they didn't know their value, right? And they, so they were charging way less than they should have been for so many years. It just varied. The other piece is, they weren't elevating the profession because everything was so low, they couldn't afford to give, a good level of service. So, that breaks my heart when I see it, right? Because, hey, there's enough work for everybody, but there's no reason to put in the kind of work that you do and deal with the kind of stress you do and have a hard time, paying your bills, right? There's, we're working on cases where we're bringing immense value to, the people with a lot of money. And if you can bring that value, they're happy to pay the good money. And if they're not willing to pay you what you're worth, find somebody who will. That's a huge part of the advice that I would give, especially, new and upcoming process servers. For investigators and for process servers as well, the other piece is, know what you're an expert at and focus on that. And if you're not expert at something, don't try and pretend like you are. You got to be transparent with your clients. And some of your clients, they like you so much that they're gonna bring you on to do their stuff that you're not expert on because they want to deal with you. And that's totally fine. That's how we've grown out and branched out to do so many different things, because we build these relationships with clients and they'll be like, hey, can you come help us with jury selection? I'll tell them, I'll say, listen, we're experts at social media. We can bang social media for you all day long. We don't, we've never done jury selection before, but I can figure out how to do it. And they'll say, yeah, let's do it. And so like that, a new portion of our business is grown. But you don't want to be the guy who they ask to do something. They're like, oh yeah, we've got that handled. You go out and you botch it, and then you look like an idiot.
And then you lose all their business.
Right. And it's just a problem, right? That's not a good way to do business.
That's good. So know your value. And what was the second one?
So know your value and know what you're expert at. And don't bill yourself as an expert at something that you really don't know what you're doing.
That's awesome. Joseph, that is so cool. That is so awesome. I love everything that you're throwing at us here today. What is the best way that we can connect with you? And then we'll say goodbye.
LinkedIn's the best way to connect with me. Just search Joseph Jones, private investigator, social media expert. You'll be able to find me. Connect with me on there. We can stay in touch.
And you can also find Joseph's show notes page at processserverdaily.com/Joseph. Joseph, I want to personally thank you for coming on the show. I've been impressed with your story, and I'm excited to share it with the world. Until next time, Server Nation, you've been served up some awesomeness by Joseph the Cyber Ninja and Mighty Mike the Podcast Server. Server Nation, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Please visit our website at processserverdaily.com/Serve Manager and get your 60-day free trial of Serve Manager, greatest software program for process servers.